In this video, we'll be taking a look at my updated 2024 election map prediction between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump now that we are halfway through the month of September. And so we're going to start off by filling in the solid states for both candidates. These are states that either Harris or Trump are going to win by 15 percentage points or more. And so beginning with the safe Trump states, we have Utah, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, North and South Dakota, all of Nebraska except the 2nd District, Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, South Carolina, Alaska, and the 2nd District of Maine. This will give the former president 126 electoral votes. While for Kamala Harris, she's only going to win by 15 points or more in Washington, California, Hawaii, as well as Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maryland, the District of Columbia, and the 1st District of Maine. This gives her just 109 electoral votes, and so Trump already has taken an early lead. In fact, as the election nears, things are only getting better and better for Trump. Just take a look at the latest Atlas Intel poll. This was the most accurate pollster in the 2020 election, and they currently have Trump leading 51 to Kamala Harris's 48 in terms of the national popular vote. This would almost guarantee a Trump victory in the Electoral College. And if you want more updates like this, follow me on Twitter. But coming back to the map here, Kamala Harris's polling numbers are continuing to go down, and she's becoming more vulnerable in states that really shouldn't be close at all, states that Joe Biden won pretty easily. And so we're now going to fill in the likely states for both candidates. These states will be decided by margins between 7 to 15%, so they're going to be clearly more competitive, but one candidate will still maintain a noticeable edge. Starting off with the likely Trump states in the Midwest, we have both Iowa and Ohio, two states that used to be pretty competitive. I mean, back in 2012, Obama won Iowa by 6 points, Ohio by 3. In 2004, Iowa was decided by less than 1%, Ohio by just over 2. These two states used to be bellwethers. They almost always voted with the eventual presidential election winner. In 2016, Trump won the election, and he won Iowa by 9.4% and Ohio by 8.1%. In 2020, everyone thought Joe Biden was going to do better. In fact, some people even had him winning Ohio, but in the end, Trump won by nearly the exact same margin. And in 2022, the Republican governors of these two states won their re-elections by 20-point margins. These two states, Iowa and Ohio, are no longer competitive. They're very Republican now, and Trump can win by at least 10 points. Getting to 15 is going to be a bit difficult. It's definitely possible, but as of right now, a likely classification is going to be more accurate. Moving down to Texas and Florida, a combined 70 electoral votes. These states are going to give Trump a huge boost. In 2020, there was a lot of talk about Biden potentially being able to flip the Lone Star State, a state that hasn't been solid red since Mitt Romney's victory there in 2012. And so generally, Texas has been shifting to the left over the last 20 years, but definitely not fast enough for Kamala Harris to have a chance here in 2024. She's probably going to lose it by more than 10 points. In 2020, Joe Biden really was the best nominee Democrats could have put up. That's why he did so well in many of the swing states. But in 2024, Kamala Harris was not chosen by the people. She was essentially anointed the Democratic candidate, and they're going to have to suffer with the consequences of having a nominee that nobody really voted for. And so in 2024, Texas is going to be a likely red state. Trump is going to win it by at least 7 points, probably by more than 10. While in Florida, this state obviously is gone for the Democrats. It used to be very close. I mean, 2012, it was the closest state in the country. It was very close once again in 2016. But in 2020, when people thought that Joe Biden would at least do better than Hillary Clinton, with most people thinking that he would actually win Florida, Trump actually expanded his lead. And in 2022, Governor Ron DeSantis was reelected by a 19-point margin. Florida is no longer a competitive state. It is going to be likely red. It will be more competitive on the presidential level, but it won't be too long until it'll be dark red as well. As for Harris, there are quite a few likely states on this map for her. We're going to begin up in Oregon. Oregon was not solid for Hillary Clinton back in 2016, and honestly, Kamala Harris's quality as a candidate is very similar to that of Hillary's 8 years ago. Oregon also just fundamentally isn't that liberal, especially compared to Washington and California. In 2022, the governor's election in Oregon was decided by a single-digit margin, although the Democrat did end up coming out on top. In Colorado, we have another likely blue state. Joe Biden won by nearly 14 points in 2020, but the state is going to be a lot closer. I see Harris winning it by just over 7 points, so it'll barely be likely blue. Illinois as well, I have Kamala Harris winning by just under 15. The state has been floating around that D plus 17 range over the last decade, but I can see Donald Trump improving this November. And in the Northeast, we have the Empire State of New York. Democrats simply aren't in a good position here. They've just had too many unpopular leaders over the last few years. Of course, if it was first Andrew Cuomo who had to resign because of sexual harassment, and then Kathy Hochul, the new governor, hasn't been popular. Her first lieutenant governor had to resign, and the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, is very unliked in the city as well. And so honestly, Democratic leadership in New York has been very poor, and that is why Kamala Harris is on track to being the first Democrat to win the Empire State by less than 15 points since Michael Dukakis in 1988. We also have neighboring New Jersey. Of course, Bob Menendez has really hurt Democrats there, and Delaware, this is Joe Biden's home state. The state simply isn't as left-leaning as many others in the Northeast. And so Kamala Harris will be at 191 electoral votes with all of her solid and likely states filled in, while Trump continues to lead with 219. Before we continue, 84% of you guys are not subscribed, so please take the time to subscribe right now for more content like this leading up to the election in November. And join my Discord server to speak with me personally. Link in the description below. And so we're now left with just 12 states, and I think looking at the states that are left, it's pretty telling that Donald Trump is doing significantly better than he was 4 years ago, because at this point, with all the likely states filled in, Joe Biden had already picked up states like Minnesota, New Mexico, Virginia, New Hampshire, and even Maine. These states all went to him by 7 points or more, but Kamala Harris isn't even going to crack a 7% margin in them this time around. While Donald Trump, he's already secured states like Iowa, Ohio, Texas, and Florida, many of which were considered to be a lot more competitive in the last election. And so we're going to start off with the lean states for Kamala Harris, beginning first in Minnesota. This is Tim Walz' home state. This is the only reason why she's leading here. If Kamala Harris didn't choose Tim Walz, or if Joe Biden hadn't dropped out of the race, I would probably have Minnesota as being tilted red, but Kamala Harris did make a somewhat smart decision by choosing Walz and avoiding the possibility of her losing a state that no Democrat has lost since 1972. So Minnesota is going to be lean blue. Hillary Clinton barely won this state in 2016 and went down to a 1.5% margin. I can see Harris winning by around 3 to 4, but definitely not the 7-point margin Biden won by in 2020. And if Kamala Harris can't even do better than Biden in a state where the state's literal governor is her running mate, I think it's very unlikely that she'll be able to crack 270. In Harris's lean state column, we also have New Mexico, 5 electoral votes. I have her winning the state by just under 7 points. She simply isn't going to do as well as Biden did, who won it by over 10 points. With Hispanic voters becoming an issue for Democrats, New Mexico is only going to get more and more competitive. And the final lean blue state on this map will be the state of Maine. Its 2 electoral votes are going to be competitive, just like they were in 2016 when Hillary Clinton carried the state by less than 3 points. Yes, Joe Biden did well in 2020, but we're probably going to see a reversal back to what we saw 8 years ago. And so with all of the solid, likely, and lean states now filled in for the vice president, she continues to trail with just 208 electoral votes. As for Trump, though, he has a sizable list of lean states as well. We're going to start off with the most obvious one, and that will be North Carolina. Out of the 7 most competitive swing states, and by swing states, I mean Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. Out of these 7 states, North Carolina is the only one that voted for Trump in both of the last 2 elections. In 2016, he won the state by nearly 4, and in 2020, he won it by 1.3. Even when Joe Biden flipped states like Georgia and Arizona, North Carolina remained true to the former president. And so there's no doubt this time around, if Trump could win it in 2020, when basically all the polls said he couldn't, he is going to win it this time around in 2024. We also have neighboring Georgia as well as Arizona in the lean red category. These are 2 states that very narrowly went to Joe Biden in 2020. This was the only time these 2 states had voted for a Democratic nominee since the 1990s. And I think that itself should tell you that Kamala Harris probably is not going to be the second Democrat to win these states in the last 30 years. She simply doesn't have what it takes. She's polling much worse than Biden was in these 2 states. I mean, if you looked at the polling from 2020, it was clear Joe Biden was going to win, to some people, even in a landslide. Florida was going to be blue, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona. There were many points in time where Texas was supposed to vote for Biden, as well as Iowa and Ohio. But in the end, Trump did so much better than any of the polling could have expected. And so with Trump continuing to maintain a lead in both Georgia and Arizona polling, there's no doubt he is going to win these states back after losing them 4 years ago. And finally, we have the keystone state of Pennsylvania. This is arguably the most important state in the country because if Trump can win Pennsylvania, there's no stopping him. If you look at the states that are remaining, Trump can win any state on this map with the exception of New Hampshire and Nevada, and that'll get him over 270. But if he wins Pennsylvania, he doesn't even need Nevada. So Pennsylvania really is crucial for the Harris campaign. And the bad news for them is that they simply are not performing that well. She's doing worse in Pennsylvania than in states like Wisconsin and even Nevada. And so according to the betting markets right now, Donald Trump has a 51% chance of flipping the keystone state back. It's a state that he won by nearly 1% in 2016. He lost it by just over 1% to Biden in 2020, and it is very likely he will win the state back. Pennsylvania will be the final lean state on this map. And so the 5 states remaining, these are all going to be decided by less than 2%. They're all going to be tilt states, and I'm going to fill in the 2nd district of Nebraska first for Kamala Harris. She has the slightest of edges there. She is also the favorite in New Hampshire, although it is going to be very, very close, just like it was in 2016 when it was the 2nd closest state in the entire country. Nobody thought Trump would be competitive there, but in the end, he almost won it. Now, Biden did do better in 2020, but in 2024, once again, Kamala Harris is nowhere near the favorable position that Biden was in 4 years ago, and so New Hampshire is barely going to go to the vice president. I can definitely see it flip. In terms of the states remaining, I mean, all of these states are going to be decided by razor-thin margins, so realistically, they could go either way, but as of right now, I have New Hampshire ever so slightly favoring the vice president, and in Virginia, 13 electoral votes, a state that Biden won by a whopping 10 percentage points. This is going to now be one of the most competitive states in the entire country. Virginia is shifting to the right. We saw that in 2021 when Republicans won the governorship, the lieutenant governorship, and even the office of the attorney general. And now for Trump, we're going to begin in Nevada, a state he has never won before. No Republican actually has won the silver state since George W. Bush in 2004. Trump lost Nevada by 2.4% in both of the last 2 elections, but this time around he is doing much better, and I would say he is the slight favorite. The silver state is going to go red for the first time in 2 decades. While up in the Midwest, Wisconsin and Michigan, I have them voting very closely to each other. Typically, Michigan is the most liberal out of the 3 blue wall states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, but due to Kamala Harris selecting Tim Walz to be her running mate, Walz is going to help Harris in Wisconsin slightly as well. So as of this point in time, I have Pennsylvania being the most conservative upper Midwestern state, with Wisconsin and Michigan both ever so slightly going in favor of Trump. This is not at all impossible. He won both of these states along with Pennsylvania in 2016. It was close back then. It'll probably be close this time around, but these are going to be 2 major victories for the former president nonetheless. Donald Trump is on track now to win 312 electoral votes. This is the strongest electoral performance for any presidential candidate in 12 years. And so as of mid-September, he is still on a pretty clear path back to the White House. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe right now for more content like this leading up to the election in November.